Well, hello, welcome. We're going to go over some contract review tips here, and you'll be able to type in questions. I believe you'll have a dashboard on your screen, and we will get to those questions at the end of this presentation. Hopefully we can get to all of them, and the ones that we don't get to or we can't quite answer right on the spot, I am going to offer my email address for people to contact me later. Again, welcome, and my name is Mike McRandall, by the way. I am the Aerospace Program Manager here at Perry Johnson Registrars, and I'll be conducting this webinar. Hopefully we'll get something out of it. It is for auditors and organizations as far as contract review and flow downs from particular customers and organizations, government entities, in what we need to look for with these. So let's start with Deepass. It's been a hot button in the industry lately, and I'm sure there are a number of people out there that are merely not familiar with it. But after we get done with this, you might find that you've seen it a lot more often than maybe you recall, and it may not have been brought to your attention enough. But Deepass is very, very prevalent in the industry. Anybody that works in defense has probably been involved in Deepass rated orders. You'll find this in different locations in your contracts, and we'll talk about that as we go. But Deepass itself is the Defense Priority and Allocation System. It's a regulation that implements the priorities and allocations authority of the Defense Production Act, which has been around for quite a while. I believe it came out in the 40s. The DPA, or the Defense Production Act's definition of national defense, includes programs for military, energy production, construction, military or critical infrastructure assistance to any foreign nation, homeland security, stockpiling, which we're going through right now in our nation, space, and any directly related activity. So if you're dealing with Department of Defense, which includes an awful lot of agencies within that, you probably have seen Deepass rated orders. We're going to do a little pop quiz here, and do know that you'll be graded on this. I mean, I was just kidding, because somebody might take me seriously. But here's what we've got. This is going to test you prior to us going through what Deepass rated orders actually tell us. We're going to see what people feel that they know. And even though this says pop quiz, I'm not looking, you can't write an answer in. At least I won't be looking for them. We're going to go over this part of the quiz. You're going to formulate in your mind a little bit about what you think we're looking for, and then we'll go over on the next slide what we should be looking for. So we have an organization that makes really only one specific product, and they make this at a rate of 1 per month, which makes the math kind of easy here. Now they've taken on a Deepass rated order. On January 1st, they contracted to make 5 units with a delivery date of May 30th on a Deepass rated order, and the order was a DXC9. That was the order rating. On February 1st, they were solicited by a different customer to contract for 4 units with a delivery date of May 30th on a Deepass rated order DXA1. Now looking at that with these known variables, DXC9 first order taken on January 1st with a promised date of 5/30, 1 per month. If you look at it, 5 units with a delivery date of 5/30, that would pretty much fill their capacity. Now on February 1st, though, they're solicited by a different customer, and this one has a DXA1 rating. Same delivery date, 4 units. Can they squeeze that in with their capacity as it currently stands? No, they can't, so they have to take a course of action. What would you think their course of action should be? And if it were you, and knowing what you know about Deepass, what would your course of action be? So here, they really have limited options. If they're faced with this particular scenario, they would have to quote the best possible delivery date for the second solicitation. The first DX order, which is the one they took January 1st, takes priority and will not be rescheduled for another. Contrary to a common misconception, the program identifiers C9 and A1 in this case do not set priorities for rated orders. Your C9 and your A1 are program identifiers. They do not impact the delivery dates or the priorities of Deepass rated orders. So priority ratings, what really are they? Kind of how do they come about? What you will see on a given contract are these orders. And what they are is DX is the highest rated national defense urgency, and they all have equal priority, and they all take preference over DO or any unrated orders. And this is based on ship schedule, and we're talking ship schedule of the upper level contract. Now, DO rated orders are ones that are critical to national defense. All DO rated orders, the same as DX, have equal priority and take preference over unrated orders based on ship schedule. The program ID represents an approved program in a delegated Deepass agency, and it does not, in and of itself, indicate any priority. You normally wouldn't concern yourself with the program identifier as to what it actually means, but it is, you can find out there's a Schedule 1 parts for CFR 15 Part 700. It does kind of break down what some of them are, and again, it's normally immaterial to you, but for example, A1 is aircraft, A2 is missiles, A3 is ships, and they have a number of different programs that are identified. Also, as just a little point of information, the DO rated orders gets nominated to the Secretary of Defense for approval. Pardon me, to the Undersecretary of Defense for approval. Now, if it's a DX rated order, it goes to the Secretary of Defense for approval. All of these orders have to be approved by somebody at a high level. There are some key elements that we should know about Deepass, and you need to understand also that the impact of any of these key elements or any Deepass requirements is very often relative to the organization's position within the supply chain, meaning the higher you are in that tier setup, the more you're going to feel that impact. The closer that your organization is to the contracting agency, again, the higher you are in the supply chain, the more likely you are to feel the impact of any of these Deepass key elements or requirements. Now, this is not to say that if you're further down that you don't have to pay attention to them. What we're going to go over here today, I would suggest that everyone that's involved in Deepass rated orders pay close attention, take under advisement, and study as you need to. You normally will not be able to use as an excuse, oh, I was way down the supply chain and it shouldn't impact me. It can. It just probably will impact you to different levels. Some of the key elements that you're going to need to know are preferential scheduling. A company that receives a rated order must schedule their operations, including the acquisition of all needed production items, in order to satisfy the delivery requirements of each rated order. Again, if you're very high up in that supply chain, you're going to feel this. You're going to hear about it normally from the contracting agency. Companies that accept these orders are required to reschedule unrated orders if they conflict with performance against a rated order, and they must reschedule DO rated orders if they conflict with performance against the DX rated order. You need to know that, and my concern here is that many organizations have accepted Deepass rated orders and have no idea that either they are Deepass rated or that they have this or can have this kind of impact on the business. Contractor responsibilities. Anybody that receives a Deepass rated order must comply with the following. They must give rated orders preferential treatment over unrated orders. We kind of mentioned that in the previous slide. All rated orders must be scheduled to the extent possible to ensure delivery by the required delivery date. The third one that is italicized for a reason. This is probably the biggest issue that contracting agencies have and that auditors will be seeing when they go out in the field to audit your organization. Flow Deepass requirements to all sub-tier suppliers within the supply chain. It is also a requirement to flow those requirements, Deepass requirements, within the organization that has accepted the contract. So you don't just need to flow them to your suppliers. You must also flow them internally. You as a contractor must also be thoroughly familiar with the Deepass regulation and you must comply. And all rated orders, here's a good one. All rated orders shall be accepted and must be filled regardless of any other rated or unrated orders that have been accepted. That's a kicker that may not always be felt at lower levels in the supply chain. But at the upper levels, the acceptance of an order is pretty close to mandatory. Now, the DCMA has contacted certain agencies, some CBs in particular, about some of their more frequent findings. They've also made this information available, and I'll give you places to find this as we get near the end of the presentation. But what they've normally found in typical corrective action issues are, number one, lack of flow down to the subcontractors. And from an auditor's standpoint, I would have to say a much higher percentage than not of places I have audited that do defense work have not adequately flowed down Deepass ratings to their sub-tiers, often because they weren't that familiar with the process. Another typical corrective action issue that DCMA finds is that the contractor's internal processes or systems do not identify rated versus non-rated orders, and that's what I referenced earlier. You're not only responsible for flowing this to subcontractors, you are responsible to flow it internally, meaning you need to identify within your facility rated versus non-rated orders if you have contracted to do them. They found on occasion that commercial orders were prioritized over Deepass rated orders, and that usually comes from lack of understanding or lack of knowledge of Deepass and what it can mean and what it can do. They found DO rated orders prioritized over DX rated orders for the same reasons, just lack of familiarity with the Deepass rating system. There has been a problem with contractors failing to inform the buying activity in advance of rated orders being shipped late. It is a requirement, if you accept these Deepass rated orders, that if you're going to be late on a particular shipment, you need to notify the contracting agency or your contractor in advance. And then another finding is just late deliveries of Deepass rated orders. They can write corrective actions for that. Now we're going to go over a few more interesting points in regard to these, in regard to Deepass rated orders. The points that we're going to go over in the next few slides are directed more toward the organizations that are sitting in on this presentation, but the auditors that are listening in can also get something from them. And I really think anybody involved in defense or in the aerospace industry should familiarize themselves with this, and they are going to get something, hopefully something out of this presentation in the next few slides to come. Some more key elements. Here's one that throws a lot of people and shakes them up until you get to understand it fully. Acceptance of rated orders. Mandatory acceptance. A person, which means an organization, shall accept every rated order received and must fill such orders regardless of any other rated or unrated order that they may have accepted. Now, what that means is, obviously, if you have the capability to do this order. This isn't if I came to you and all you make is a jack screw and I tell you I want a tire. That's not what it means. But when you read the entire guideline and regulation that goes with this, it explains in more detail what mandatory acceptance means. You just can't refuse an order offhand. You have to, as we go on, there's only certain reasons that you can reject an order. This person or organization also cannot, shall not, discriminate against rated orders in any manner, such as by charging higher prices or by imposing different terms and conditions than for comparable unrated orders. This hasn't been a huge problem recently, but early on, and in a lot of companies' lack of understanding of this Deepass, they assume defense-rated order, it looks like a government job, we can jack the price up. That's not going to go very well. Some more key elements, and here's where we talk about the rejection. A person may not accept a rated order for delivery on a specific date if they're unable to meet that date. That does not get you completely off the hook, though. As it says, however, the person/organization must inform the customer of the earliest date on which delivery can be made, and they have to offer to accept the order on the basis of that date. So you may be 6 months out at your best shot at it. You still have to offer that to accept that order. And then the contracting agency or whomever came to you can reject and go elsewhere. The existence of previously accepted unrated or lower rated orders is not sufficient reason for rejecting a rated order, and that means simply you may be loaded on your shop floor with work and you're approached by, say you're approached directly by the contracting agency that holds this contract, and they say, we need you to make 50 of these and you have to deliver by May 15th, and you're saying, well, I've got all this work, I can't. You cannot refuse it if those are unrated orders. That if your backlog is that of unrated orders. A person/organization shall not accept a DO-rated order for a delivery date which would interfere with delivery of any previously accepted DO or DX-rated orders. You must offer to accept the order based on earliest delivery date otherwise possible. And again, what this is telling you, you don't, if you're capable of making the product, and that's what you've been approached to do, you cannot offhand refuse the order. Sometimes it feels a little tough, but that's the way this is set up. Some more rejection of rated orders. Shall not accept a DX-rated order for delivery on a date which would interfere with the delivery of previously accepted DX-rated orders, but again, you have to offer to accept the order based on earliest delivery due date otherwise possible. This always goes back to the same thing. If you have the capability to perform this work, you pretty much have to accept the order, or at least give your best date possible for accepting it. If it's that far out, and if you're overloaded with work because you've already accepted DX-rated orders, But then it would be up to the agency that approached you as to what to do next. Would they go elsewhere or what? Here's where rated orders must be used, and this isn't always clear to organizations out there either. A rated order must be used to obtain the following: items which will be physically incorporated into other items to fill rated orders. So we're talking about subassemblies, individual component parts. Any of that that falls off the main order will fall under Deepass rating. Containers that are specific to that are required to make delivery of the finished items, they also fall under Deepass. Services other than contracts of employment that are needed to fill rated orders, they fall under it. And MRO, anything that's going to, that part of that falls under finished items, or that you're going to need to produce the finished items, they fall under the Deepass rating system. So we talked at length here on Deepass. And again, before we get into the customer QA clauses, I want to stress, so as not to frighten away everyone, the impact of those Deepass requirements is fairly often, or most often, relative to your organization's position in the supply chain. And that, we're talking visibility. If you're further down the supply chain and you're supplying a somewhat non-critical part, and there are 7 levels above you, the chances are you're not going to get noticed as much by the contracting agency as you are by your customer, the one who flowed the particular requirements to you. You will be answering to them most likely. The ones at the higher level of the supply chain that have accepted Deepass rated orders will feel the impact much, much more strongly, oftentimes to the point, or could be to the point, of getting help with those orders from the contracting agency. Now, customer QA clauses that say do not necessarily flow Deepass. Now, they should be flowed down internally and to suppliers as applicable. This as applicable is not only for the organizations that are attending this webinar. This is also a note to the auditors. You need to understand, and the organization needs to be able to explain to you, the applicability or lack thereof for flowdowns. Not every requirement applies to all situations. And as an example, and it's noted here, if you have a first article requirement flowed to you from a customer, or a raw material certification requirement. They say they require you to supply raw material certifications for their order. If you're getting certain work done outside non-destructive testing, you're obviously not going to be asking them for a raw material cert. You don't need to flow that to the supplier. It needs to be applicable to that particular situation, and auditors need to know that. So if you have questions on this particular one, and it's something that's maybe going to draw the presentation out a little longer than normal, you can ping me an email and I can explain it to you. Whether you're an auditor or an organization, I can explain what we're talking about here, but you have to understand the applicability of the requirements that your customer has sent to you, and the auditors need then to be able to get that communicated to them through the organization. Statements of work, or SOWs, when they are included as part of the contract, should be reviewed by the audit team for specific flow-down requirements, in particular key characteristics and special processes. Now again, as an auditor on site, we don't expect you to read the entire statement of work because it may be fairly lengthy. The organization should be familiar with that and should be able to then communicate to the auditor the sections of that statement of work that would show these applicable flow-downs. Oftentimes, I shouldn't say often, on occasion, you will get requirements from a customer that may seem confusing. it is incumbent upon the organization. You must clarify and subsequently resolve any customer requirements that may seem confusing or unclear prior to your commitment to supply product. Word of mouth, a verbal, this happens often. A buyer will tell you, don't worry about it, that's not a problem. You may get, as part of the customer wants or requirements, they may be asking you to do something to a particular spec that is now obsoleted, or maybe an old revision of a spec. You have to get that in writing. Anytime that there's an issue that's not straightforward, cut and dried, get it in writing. It is unacceptable, and an auditor is not going to accept from you if your contract says we're doing this, this, and this to revision E, and you're doing it to revision C, and you explain that the buyer from the customer told you it was okay. That's not going to hold up from an audit standpoint, and quite frankly, from a business standpoint, you have to understand that you are responsible for anything that's in that contract that you have bought into. So you need to get it in writing if there's going to be a change, or if there's going to be something that's maybe slightly out of the norm. You have to understand that any contract, and this goes back to the Deepass rated things also, as a business, you're going to be responsible for the end product that you agreed to supply and the configuration thereof and every other part of that contract that you signed on to. You need to familiarize yourself with what the customer requirements are, what maybe industry requirements are. So get it in writing. If you get a buyer, if you get an engineer, if you get a customer contact that says, don't worry about it, that's okay. It could jump up to bite you business-wise, and it definitely could jump up to bite you in an audit situation. Going back to the Deepass, which is where we spend most of the time, I have there's a couple of documents or links that might help you here. If you get a hold of 15 CFR 700, which is Title 15 CFR 700 Subchapter A, there's a breakdown that will explain to you your Deepass requirements. Also, the link there, the HTTP, the guidebook, that's your DCMA guidebook to Deepass ratings. When you go to that page, it has links to 15 CFR 700, Subchapter A. It's also got some training materials. It should answer a number of your questions on Deepass ratings. Now, a little wrap up here. You need to remember, if you're dealing in defense product, familiarize yourself with Deepass rated orders and the Deepass rating system, what it means, how it can impact your business. And basically the same goes for customer requirements that are flowed contractually. These are binding. You need to educate yourself in their nomenclature. They may use terminology that you're not totally familiar with. Clarify that up front. Once that contract is signed, you're bound to it. You need to meet those requirements. You need to fulfill that contract to every degree stated there. As auditors, when we come in, we're going to be looking at those contracts. If there's a Deepass rating listed on there, and they're not that hard to find, but it will tell you if it's a rated or an unrated order. And then it will tell you DXA1 or DON7. We will then, as auditors, say, let's see how you flowed this internally, and let's see how you flowed it to your supply base. That needs to be there, and you need to understand that. The customer requirements are similar, although there is more of an as applicable stamp on those. The customers flow their requirements. They have QA clauses. They may have them in the terms and conditions. They may have a statement of work. They may say basically manufactured to blueprint, such and such revision, whatever. But you need to familiarize yourself with how those customers let you know what they want and need, and then your responsibilities following that. Now look, as I said, I'm going to try to answer any questions you may have. If any of them pop up, I'll take a look and I can answer them here. If you think of them at some point later, you can email me. That's my email address. This presentation is available on our website, so you can go in and it's a PDF, but you can pull it up and it will have my contact information there. And I'd like to answer any questions that pop up. What I'm looking for is it doesn't have to be directly related to this presentation, but if it's a contract review or a Deepass type order, I'll do my best to answer for you. I have one here right now that says, how much of this applies to commercial service orders? You have 50 employees in a machine shop environment. If you identify the Deepass rating on your route sheet issued to the floor, have you complied to the internal notification requirement? Yes, you have. Yes, you have. It's got to be identifiable. You've done that. Now, as far as scheduling goes, you have to understand also that if push comes to shove and you've got a Deepass rated order in your shop, you need to schedule it as such that that it's going to hit the date it's required. If you don't have to move anything else to do that, that's great. If there's a squeeze and you're going to miss the date and you've got other work that's not rated there, then you would be required to move that in your schedule so that the Deepass one took priority. And if there are no other questions, or if some arise later, like I said, we can address them then. I am open to them. In lieu of that, I want to thank everybody for attending. Let's see, there is, what about customers that are not sending written agreements? Okay, that's one of the things I referred to when I said you need to really dig in and verify their requirements and understand them. If they're not sending it in writing, you need to get something because you're agreeing to it. If you're agreeing to something on a phone call, wouldn't you normally get a purchase order or a change or something? If you're going to be held accountable for it, my suggestion is that you get something documented to say that exactly what you can or cannot do, or what you must or must not do. Where on the website can you find the presentation? I would have to say, and we'll have somebody post this on the website. There is a location where webinars are stored. So you go to pgr.com and look under webinars, and there should be a place where that is located. And if not, please send me an email, and I will see to it that it is. So the person that wanted to that asked about what if they don't send me anything in writing, so you're keeping evidence of a written request to them and they are not responding. If you accept the order and you're doing the work and you've got a backup that says you're trying to get information from them, that's fine. My question, I guess, would be if you've accepted an order from them and they've not given you anything in writing, I don't understand how that breaks out as far as what your liability is or how you even fulfill the order. But yes, if from an auditor standpoint, if you've got a trail that shows that you're trying to get information from them, you're doing your due diligence there, I guess. I just don't understand taking orders without something in writing, but we can do that. I like that. Somebody just said, well, Frank, how you doing? Expression here in Alabama is we can read writing, but we cannot read talking. I love it. That is true. And you know, oftentimes when you hear somebody such as myself telling you to get it in writing, it's for a number of reasons, but part of it is for protection. If I contract with somebody to do something, and then after I contract with them, they change their conditions or their requirements, and I don't document that, or they tell me to do something different than what I said, and I go ahead and do it, and then later on, the contract said I was supposed to do it the other way, they could come back at me. I could owe money, I could do whatever. I would myself not go forward without something in writing, but you know your business as well, and this is, I didn't want to scare anybody with the Deepass, but it is something that's been brought to our attention by DCMA, and I figure that there's so much of that work going on out there, we might as well pay real close attention to it. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here. Again, mine is an open door. You've got my email address, and through that, when I respond to you, I will also supply you with telephone contact information if need be. So thank everyone for attending. Good luck going forward. Read those contracts, baby. Sometimes they can fool you. Take care. Have a great, great day.